Nintendo is already cooking up multiple different things at the headquarters when it comes to the next generation Nintendo Switch, when it comes to the next big Mario game, and how they're even going to position themselves going forward. And we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first as we break down the best Nintendo news and a bit more on the channel. So I appreciate all the support, and let's go ahead and jump right into it because the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto. Let me make sure that I say that correctly before the Nintendo ninjas come through. Shigeru Miyamoto has talked about what Nintendo wants to do in terms of the next Mario game and expanding Mario in different ways. And I think I know what they're going to do for the next Mario game. So let's go ahead and get into it. This was in a Q&A portion of the financial results that came out. There was a ton of information. Make sure you check out the channel. I've had a lot of videos already on it. And Mr. Miyamoto talked about a variety of different things. He started off by talking about the full comments between 2D versus 3D Mario. Quote, "As for the difference between 2D Mario and 3D Mario, let me explain by describing the background for the development of the Wii game New Super Mario Bros. Wii, which was released in 2009. At the time, it felt like each time we created a new installment in the Super Mario series, which by then had expanded into 3D, it became more complicated. After the release of Super Mario Galaxy in 2007, the goal was to develop a more accessible 3D Super Mario game, and the result was New Super Mario Bros. Wii, a basic side-scrolling Super Mario game that even new players could easily play. That later led to the release of an even simpler Super Mario Run game, a mobile application released in 2016. When we develop software, we strive to incorporate new elements, but at the time, we want to make it easy even for first-time players to have fun. Recently, people of all generations have been enjoying 3D Mario game Super Mario Odyssey, released back in 2017. So for 3D Mario going forward, we want to try expanding in new ways." So let's go ahead and talk about this because that is the bottom half there that everyone is discussing in terms of what's next for 3D Mario. So I think that the success of Super Mario Odyssey cannot be undermined, cannot be looked past. That game was a massive success. It was such a massive success, it's actually the best-selling 3D Mario game of all time. And it's been the best-selling 3D Mario game of all time on a single release for quite some time now, even before the Switch was starting to pile up its huge install base. So the game has a fantastic ratio of Switch to actual purchasers. So I think that that concept of what Odyssey does is absolutely going to stick around. That isn't going anywhere. But what else will they add to the mix? There was a little game that came out, you guys might know. It's called Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. Now this game adds, for the first time ever, online multiplayer 3D Mario with the Switch version of the game, and on top of that, it comes with a little bit of DLC essentially packed onto it called Bowser's Fury, and that game is fundamentally different from the Super Mario 3D World game and fundamentally different from any other 3D Mario game to date at this point, because instead of having it to where you hop into a level, you gather a star or a moon or whatever the case is, you get that and then you leave, they had it to where you just freely walk or stroll or float or scratch or whatever, because you're a cat in there, into the levels and just do the star right there, collect it, then keep going on your way. I think that for the next Mario game, a fusion between what they did with Super Mario Odyssey and Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, but in particular, Bowser's Fury is what we're going to get next. Slap behind a big theme, maybe a villain's theme on there, and Mario kind of going through all of them and them having their own territories or own kingdoms that you can freely explore with no issues in terms of going into something, then getting something, then coming back out, then kind of going back and forth. I think that you have a fantastic theme and game for the next Mario title, and that would be my guess in terms of what they are going to do. I kind of felt that I knew that they were going to do something like Odyssey before Odyssey came out, and now I just have a feeling that they're going to do something like what I just described with this one here. I think Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury was a massive success. That game is over 7 million units, almost going towards 8 million, and it just came out at the beginning of the year, so they're obviously happy with the sales of that game, and I think that they can expand upon the ideas because that game was very fun and fluid and great to play play, and I love the theme of Bowser coming down there and destroying stuff and having that happen every now and then, and just freely moving from one spot to another gave an experience that was just so good, and I think a breath of fresh air for the Mario series, almost kind of like how on a much smaller scale, obviously this was bigger, but how Breath of the Wild came out and took what the original Legend of Zelda did in kind of the exploration phase, and you kind of combine that with some of the other Zelda games out there, and then you create something that's brand new, a very different experience for fans out there. If they can do the same thing for Mario, I think that's going to be a huge game that they can have out maybe at the launch of the next Nintendo Switch, or even a bit later if they want to launch it towards like the end of the year, if the next Switch launches at the beginning of the year like the regular Switch. So they have options for it, and they're going to be set up in a great position, as I think that both Bowser's Fury and also Odyssey have so many different things that they can do to kind of work together in a design function. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Nintendo does next. But what are your thoughts on this, guys? When it comes to the next big Mario game, what do you feel they're going to do? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, and moving on to the next topic here, we are going to discuss a bit about the Nintendo Switch 2, or the next Nintendo Switch, or what Nintendo's going to do, because some more comments have came out. Now, and I have covered this just a little bit, but I did want to get into a couple extra things that Nintendo has said on this next gen Nintendo Switch based off of the recent financial investors meeting. This is Shuntaro Furukawa, the Nintendo president. Here's what he had to say on the new system. Quote, "We are not able to comment on the next game system at this time. It is now the 5th year since the launch of the Nintendo Switch, and the total hardware sell-through has exceeded 90 million units. We recognize that the system is at the midpoint of its life cycle. The launch of the Nintendo Switch OLED model has also been contributing to continued sales momentum, and we are now offering consumers 3 Nintendo Switch models to match their playstyles and lifestyles, as well as a wide range of software. With this, we believe a foundation for growth has been laid that exceeds what we previously considered to be a conventional hardware life cycle. With regards to the next game system, we are considering many different things, but as far as the concept and launch timing are concerned, there is nothing we can share at this time." So just to let you guys know, if you don't know, anytime that a company, especially the big three, puts out a current system, they're already thinking about the next system. They're already saying, okay, here are the first concepts. Here's what we can do next. Because as a technology company, you always must look forward. You can't just sit there and stagnate, because if you do, you're going to be in trouble when you actually need to move on this, and if you haven't invested those necessary research and development. So it takes time, it takes years, it takes a lot of effort, and it's not easy to do. I know that these companies make it look easy, but it's not easy to do at all. Now, this is interesting because obviously Nintendo is going to start looking at what they're doing next, right? And they're midway through. So this is going to go a little bit longer than what we've seen before. Maybe it goes a little bit longer than the Nintendo Wii, or a little bit longer than the Wii U, probably, obviously a little bit longer than the Wii U did for the most part. But I think that it's obviously a smart move. The Nintendo Switch OLED is doing extremely well, which I talked about before. I think that Nintendo needs to really think through what they're going to do for the next Nintendo Switch system. They need to make sure that the tech is ready. They need to make sure that they have enough systems. With the chip shortage and everything that's going on, you don't want that to be a problem. Obviously, with the Switch name, or with the concept of hybrid, which I do think they will keep that hybrid form factor and that hybrid way of doing things, you have to make sure that you get enough power, value, the heat consumption, if it gets too hot or not, or whatever the case is. There are so many different things that you have to consider when it comes to making a new system, especially when making a hybrid, and also having the price, because you can talk about power and you want all this and that into the system, have this many gigabytes of RAM and all that, but how much is that going to cost? We're seeing the prices of having a high spec portable handheld platform with the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck, the highest model, is nearly $700 when you put together with the tax on there. So obviously Nintendo cannot come out with a system that is that high of priced. You know, we need to have a system that's not just digital only, that can also have game cards, that can also do everything that we're used to with the Nintendo Switch, but then add on top of that with better graphics and more features and everything. So Nintendo definitely has their work cut out for them in this area, but I'm hoping that they can come through, especially with the help of NVIDIA, what they're doing there with the DLSS technology. I think that there's ways to work with NVIDIA and a custom Tegra chip or a custom NVIDIA chip to where they can get far more performance out of this thing than what you would think because it's going to be something that wasn't already established, something that was made for the Switch 2 for itself, whereas Tegra X1, that was already something that Nintendo kind of saw and said, okay, let's take that. It was great at the time, 2015, but obviously it's a lot further down the line now. But I think that this next system, now that they know that the hybrid concept is something that they can rely upon and it's going to sell well and it has that momentum behind it, they can invest more into that and have a truly custom Tegra chip for it. So that's what I think that they're working on right now, because it's still a number of years off. Now let's go ahead and talk about this next thing here, and that is Nintendo positioning themselves in the industry with the competition heating up. Microsoft, they have the Xbox Series S and X that's doing better. Forza just launched, so obviously people are excited about that. You have the PlayStation 5 that's just been selling out, just like the Xbox been selling out pretty much everywhere around the world. And Sony's definitely going to keep firing with big exclusives. So how does Nintendo see themselves when it comes to the competing platforms and the power that they offer and everything? Let's get into what Furukawa had to say. Quote, going forward, we would like to grow by continuously offering the unique entertainment which is enabled by our integrated hardware software development. While maintaining our integrated hardware software dedicated video game platform business at the center of our business, we also want to establish a framework through Nintendo accounts that encourages more consumers to continue playing on Nintendo platforms over the long term. Furthermore, by providing touch points for Nintendo IPs such as visual content, theme parks, and merchandise at retail locations, we hope to generate new interest in Nintendo games among people who normally do not play games, and encourage consumers who once used our game systems to return and start playing again. We believe that it is important to operate these three areas of business, that is to stick to Nintendo's unique entertainment at the core and establish a structure in the surrounding areas that thoroughly invigorates our business. So in other words, we ain't worried about them, bro. We just got to do what we got to do. That's essentially what Furukawa is saying here. And I know that seems like it's simplistic, but that's what he's saying here. Hey, we're going to do our business. We're going to do us. They're going to do them. We're going to worry about what we can do. We need to get this Mario movie out. Maybe there's this Donkey Kong movie that's being rumored. We're going to get our theme parks going. We have COVID to worry about with that. I mean, we have a lot of stuff that we have to do. We just invested nearly $1 billion into software game development. We have 300 billion yen being invested into Nintendo accounts and everything. There is a lot that they've got to do to get better. They've got to improve the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. They've got to do a lot of stuff. So they can't be sitting here worried about the competition, worrying about what other systems are doing for most of the part. Nintendo needs to expand and get better and needs to have that carryover that Microsoft and Sony have had for decade plus, right? Microsoft almost like 2 decades at this point, pretty much 2 decades with Xbox Live, and Sony definitely getting up there with the PlayStation 3 era and the PSN accounts, despite getting hacked all the time, but that's okay. You know what I'm saying? They still have them there, you know, and people have been able to keep that relationship over the course of time, which I've had my original PSN account, I've had my original Xbox account for a long time. So Nintendo needs to make sure that they get that done, because they are lacking in those areas compared to the competition. So taking care of their own business and getting that done is the most important thing for Nintendo. So that's how they'll compete. As long as they have their video games, which they do have, their unique entertainment, which is what makes Nintendo Nintendo, they're always going to be in it. As you can see with the Nintendo Switch, it's still selling extremely well. It's doing well. People are still enjoying the games. The games are reviewing well. So I think that's not a problem right now at this point. And by the time that things start getting a little bit long in the tooth, or at least more long in the tooth for the business, then Nintendo will have their next system out and it'll be backwards compatible. So you can play all your regular Switch games. You'll have your Nintendo account. You can play your Nintendo Switch Online. You can play all your DLC or digital games. So they'll make sure that they take care of that with these Nintendo accounts, like they've already stated here. So they'll be all right going forward in that respect. So what are your thoughts when it comes to these different topics here, guys? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.